Okay, everybody who's here, it looks like there's standing room only, it appears, which is really excellent in a hall this size. I have a favor to ask. I'm starting in only 2 minutes. So I have a favor to ask. If as many of you as possible can come up and fill out for me on a piece of paper. Can we get this screen showing? Yeah, here we go. What I want to do is answer one word. What is the essence of what an estimate is? And if we can just fill that out, there's some pens we can use. For me, I have a few more pens. Yeah, do the best you can. Yeah, a lot of times I come to these things and then the person helping it stage, they run off with all my pens. So there we go. What I'd like you to do, please fill out as quick as you can, as many of you as possible, to fill out for me in one word. Try to make it an English word if you can. What is the essence of what is an estimate? What's the essence of what is an estimate? This will be a big favor to me, and I really appreciate your help on this. Those of you who've heard me give this talk before, and there might be a few of you, then I appreciate your assistance as well. But you already know what to write. So please, fill this out for me, one note, one word. Yeah, just bring them up right there is probably good. One word. What is an estimate? Please use no more than one word. I want to get as many of those as possible. We start in only 1 minute, and maybe I won't need an introduction. It doesn't look like there's going to be enough people to really warrant an introduction. That's all right by me. This is quite an imposing hall. If you would do it that for me and fill out that paper and they'll gather them back, or you can bring it up yourself. I want to have those back, and we can put them in a pile here is okay, as quick as we can. So do you want to introduce me still, or should I just go ahead and start? Just go ahead. I'll go ahead and start. I'm Woody Zuill. You can introduce yourself. Yes, I am who I am. And that's all that I am. All I'm asking for you to do right now, those of you who haven't done it yet, it's a bit of a ring to this. Is that working okay? Is this going to stay on my head properly? Does that seem to be okay? Okay. All righty. So if you would please fill this out, put down one word. What is an estimate? We've officially started. So we probably have enough of these. If you could have someone bring those up to me, that would make it really easy. No, that's perfect. That's good to gather them like that, and then I'll go through them in a moment. I'm not sure how I'm going to use them here. Usually I have a flip chart or something like that. This thing does not seem to want to stay directly on my head. I probably have it on upside down. I'm okay with it. Don't worry too much. You'll put those together for me, and I'm going to go ahead and start talking. So I'm Woody Zuill, and I've been a software developer for about 35 or so years, because I started in 1982 or 3. And what I'm going to talk about today is estimates or no estimates. We've got about 40 minutes, I guess, to cover this. We'll see how we can do. Thank you, everybody who's come to this talk. I think this is a good room. It makes me feel very humble to see that I can hardly even half fill this room. So I appreciate the organizers for putting me in this huge hall. So part first, this is a disclaimer, how it started for me, some lessons learned, and a few other things. The value of another's experience is to give us hope, not to tell us how or whether to proceed. I try to start every one of my talks with this. I'm here to share with you some of my thinking and some of my experiences, but I can't tell you what to do or how things should be done in your own company. So I'm just here to share with you a few ideas. This first part, I want to start with a story that relates back to when I first really got serious about speaking at conferences and really in the early days at user groups, because I had noticed something on a contract I had taken. It was a 3 to 6 month contract. They were hiring 200 developers. How long is a project that's meant to be 3 to 6 months? Does anybody know? How long is a 3 to 6 month project? At least 2 years. This was about a 2-year project once they discovered how much there was to do. But when I took the job, I had just come off of a job where we were doing extreme programming, pretty much, 1999. And I was looking for some other project I could work on that would be similar, that we could do something like iterations and maybe extreme programming and testing and things like that. And so this is what I found. This was a project with 200 developers. They were at least going to do iterations. The iterations were going to be approximately 6 weeks, or really 6 weeks, and they were dividing it up arbitrarily into 2 weeks of planning and 2 weeks, it would be 2 weeks of planning, estimating, requirements gathering, whatever, then 2 weeks of coding, and then 2 weeks of testing and integration. Not clear on why they balanced it out that way, but that's what they were going to do. But the key to me is that thing near the bottom where it says lessons learned. They were going to do a retrospective, so to speak, at the end of each 6-week period. So we ran out to do our work. 200 developers, most of them about half my age. And this was in 1999, so that was a long time ago. These were really young people, 22, 23-year-old people. And at the end of the 6 weeks, we had our lessons learned. And I noticed 3, I think, very important points about what we had learned. The first one is the estimates were off. And so we talked about what are we going to do to get better at this? Or what are we going to do about it? And what they said is we need to get better at doing our estimates. The next one was we really didn't understand the requirements when we started, so we need to get better at understanding the requirements before we start. And the last one was the requirements kept changing. So what do we do about that? Somebody can tell me. Keep them from changing. This is what they said to do. So we worked hard to get better. They actually gave us some training. They brought some people in to show us how to work, and they worked with us. Now, remember, I was already sort of an older guy. I kind of knew we had a problem, but this is what they did. Let's get better at the estimates. Let's work hard to do that. Get better at understanding the requirements before we start working on them, and then control the changes. Those are the things they wanted to do. Nowadays, probably we wouldn't go about it exactly the same way, but that's what they decided. Remember, this is almost 20 years ago, so we went off on our second iteration. At the end of the 12th week, now we were 2 iterations into it, we had our retrospective. I noticed 3 things were primary in that retrospective that were wrong. Can anybody tell me what they were? Okay, so I don't need to bring them out one at a time, right? You all know this is what it was. So being the older guy, I'd already seen this pattern, and yet I kept my mouth shut because I was just one of 200 developers. I didn't want to be the squeaky wheel at that time. I wanted to keep my job and keep working. So we worked hard to get better at the estimates and to learn how to understand our requirements better and then not allow any changes. And at the end of the 3rd iteration, we did our lessons learned, which nowadays we would call a retrospective. What did we discover? We could all shout it out now, 1, 2, and 3. I don't need to bring this out again. You know what I'm talking about. So this was puzzling to me, and I decided at that moment to talk about it. Because we're going to do the same pattern over and over again, and this is a pattern. Do you all see that that's a pattern, I hope? Because this is basically what's happening. For each iteration, we're going to charge off and do our work, at the end of which we're going to discover the same 3 things are wrong, and then we're going to try and get better at those and go for the next iteration, and over again. When I see this kind of a pattern, or any pattern, I look for a name, and I couldn't find a name for it. Pardon me. So I made up my own name. I call this the cycle of continuous no improvements. And since that time, I've been watching for this, and I've seen it at many places. Matter of fact, when this contract ended, I left after 3 of the iterations because it was just the same thing over and over. However, at this point, first of all, I noticed this, and this is what I asked in the meeting. When we see a symptom and we try to solve for the symptom, all we get is some kind of it's like taking an ibuprofen or something. If we've got a cut on our arm, it makes us feel a little bit better, but it doesn't solve for the cut on the arm. So I want to know, what is the problem underneath? What is the thing that's causing this symptom? Same thing with if we don't understand the requirements. What's the underneath problem? Do you see that these three things are related? I hope you do. Now, I'm not going to delve into this. In a longer version of this talk, I probably would. I want to cover too much territory. But you can see right now, they were looking at the symptoms of something else. So, first of all, this is a kind of one of my I would call these my maxims that I've been working with for a long, long time. And I believe this. It's in the doing of the work that we discover the work that we must do. And this is because the doing exposes reality. And we were having the reality exposed to us, but they weren't noticing that. And this is what I was asking. I was saying, are we noticing this thing's a pattern? This is what happened the next day. That person down in the front is me, and that's everyone else. As I walked down the hall amongst all these very young people, who I was becoming pretty good friends with some of them, I walked down the hall and they would sort of part for me. They would just go around me. And I thought, something's going on here. So these were young people. They're not quite as aware as maybe an older person like me would be. So I cornered one of them. And he wasn't able to get away. He didn't realize he could just walk around me, but he was too polite. And I cornered him, and I actually asked him. He was kind of one of the people that were becoming one of my friends. And I asked him, why isn't anyone talking to me? And he said, the managers told us not to talk with you. So this is a very different problem than what I thought we had. This was telling me that the people who were in charge of this thing probably knew that everything we were doing to solve the problem wasn't going to solve the problem. And this is what I came to believe. Is it safe? So NoEstimates a placeholder for a much bigger conversation. Is it safe to talk about the status quo? Can we safely question the practices that we have? Or are we going to get in trouble for doing that? They didn't let me go, by the way. They didn't fire me. I was there until I re-upped my contract several times. I left after 9 months, I believe, because I could see this thing was just going to continue like it was. It wasn't going to be the 6-month project they had hoped for. It went over 2 years, I believe. And then they got it into production, and once it was delivered, it didn't do what they wanted it to do. You know the old story. And this was a big waste of a lot of money. 200 developers goes through a lot of money quickly. And from some of the other talks I've seen today already, we don't want to have these big projects. We want to split our risk down into smaller things. So this is sort of what I see, but there's a bigger idea. And I'm going to share that with you now, and then I'm going to try and come back around to it later on. The object isn't to make art. It's to be in that wonderful state which makes art inevitable. If we set up the environment for good things, then I will say good things are going to happen. That's what my experience has been. And let's see where we can go with that. So that was the first part. There are only 83 parts, so I'm going to kind of can go a little bit slow, I suppose. So I'm going to talk about the hashtag for a bit, and then I want to talk about what are estimates, and you helped me decide that here with the papers you filled out. And then a little exercise, a bit of a definition, and why do we do estimates. So this hashtag I used for the first time in 2012 in a conversation where I had written a blog post to give an example of how I had worked without estimates on a project. It was a project from 2003, and this was in 2012. And Ron Jeffries had asked me to write a blog post about this thing I was trying to describe in Twitter. In those days, Twitter was half the size of an area as it is now, so you couldn't do much explaining in Twitter, although we try. And so I wrote that blog post, and I put this little tweet up. I didn't invent it to be controversial. It was just to show a placeholder for this particular article. But it led to me finding hundreds, if not maybe now thousands of people who are interested in talking with me about this. And that was important to me. I want to have this conversation. I want to question the status quo. The controversy came for free. So I didn't need to go out and try to be controversial, but it's ended up what happened, and that's what's ended up getting me invited to speak at conferences like this. So it was a good thing for me, because now I have people I can talk to about these ideas. So we need to get a way to define what we're talking about, and I'm going to talk about a very specific sort of thing. So you've put together here for me what you have, and somebody really kindly organized these for me. Thank you very much. So because you can't really see them, I'll read them off. This pile of about 10 says a guess. This one says luck, a forecast, a lie, and a deadline. This one, oh, this is even worse, maybe. A false idea of commitment, arbitrary, guess about potential effort. I'm going to put that into the guess pile. And prediction. What is a prediction? But a guess. So I'm going to put that in the guess pile. But this one here says it's about when will it be done, the price, the size. Another one's about assumptions. I'm not sure where that one goes. But here's another one about sizing and sizing, a grouping there. Oh, here's a good one. It's a hallucination. And then I have, it's a conversation, it's a promise, and it's an approximate based on gut feeling. Remember, one word. Now, I'm not going to point out who did this, but I want you to stand up and indicate who you were so everyone can mock you. No? Okay. Just kidding. All righty, so I've done this exercise probably 200 times now, and this is what I almost always end up with. Look at, half of them are guess about the time, the size, or the cost, so we could do some planning. We're kind of close to that with what you came up here. If we had a little more time to do that exercise, we probably would have got that. Here was a group of CTOs and CEOs that I did this talk for. What is the first thing you notice about it? They had trouble with the one-word thing. That's all right. Some of the things they say there are very similar to what we're talking about, but they want to call it a best guess or an informed guess. Does your manager ever come to you and say, I would like to have your worst guess? I'd like to have your least informed guess. They don't say that. So it can be assumed that the guess is going to be well informed, that's going to be educated, best current guess, a guess about how long something will take. Yeah. Alrighty, let's go on. Let's do an estimate. Do this for me really quickly. 3 months from today, you'll have to write your name down on an index card with a blue fountain pen. Estimate how long it will take you to do that work on that day. How long? Somebody shout it out. 1 hour to write your name on a piece of paper. What's that? But let's just assume, how long will it take you to do that work? It's 3 months from today. Say 10 seconds, 5 seconds. Okay, just say what I want you to say, okay? Okay, here's the problem. Let's change it slightly so it's more in what you wanted to hear. Oops, I went to the wrong one. I don't know that I have the right one here, so I'm going to change it. So please just allow me whoops, I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to tell you this requirement now. Right now, you need to write down on a index card your name with a blue fountain pen. How long will it take you? So how long to get the blue fountain pen? How long to get an index card? Does anybody have a blue fountain pen here? An actual fountain pen, not just a ballpoint pen or a felt tip pen. Nobody. I happen to have one. Let me get it out. I came so prepared today. Does this fulfill the need? It has blue ink in it, but the pen is yellow. Okay, I don't know if that fulfills the need. This is the problem. Our requirements don't tell us everything we want to get from them. So I want to talk about this. If it takes you 5 seconds, 10 seconds to write your name, when you have all the material there, we don't know how long it's going to take for you to gather the material. I would say right now, we probably could find a stationery store nearby where we could get what we need. But let's go on. So we're going to talk about the work time, which is what a developer usually asks for. How long is it going to take you to do the work? And the elapsed time or cycle time. How long is it going to take from beginning to end? From when we first know we need to do it till we can deliver it. These are two different things. What is the estimate going to be of, and are either of those useful? Now, I'm not going to talk about lead time. We really don't have time for that. So I wanted a working definition. Using what you've told me, we'll use this. An estimate is a guess about the amount of time, usually the work time, to create a project, a feature, some bit of work in developing software. Can we use that as our definition? Is that okay? Good enough? Silence. Maybe show of hands. Is this okay? And what else do we want? Those of you who didn't raise your hand, what would you call an estimate? Okay, good. Silence, I can go with that. So why do we estimate? Usually we want to be able to predict the future. We want to know things like, when will it be done? How much is it going to cost? What can we get done this sprint? How many people will we need to hire or have? What can we get done for this money? Are these things facts? Have the estimates given us facts, or what has it given us? Think about that. I'm not going to ask you to, but this is what I believe. These results are just a sort of information. What do we do with this information? That's what's important. These estimates help us to make decisions, okay? Or spark a conversation. There was one person who wrote down conversation. These are the two things I usually hear. But why do we have the conversation? What's that for? So we can make a decision. So that's what this is about. We're doing the estimates so we can make a decision. The estimates themselves may be useful, may not be useful, but at least now we know why we're using them. Is there any other reason we would do an estimate? You can say, oh, so we could get somebody to give us some work. Well, somebody's got to make a decision based on that estimate. So often a developer will do the estimates because their boss is asking for them. But I'm not talking about why would we like to have those estimates? Okay, so we're on to part third. We only have 80 parts left. A little bit about questions, and this is all this is for me, really. Questions. So transformation comes more from pursuing profound questions rather than seeking practical answers. If that's true, it's all about the question and not so much about the answer. And I'll go with this from Deming. If you don't know how to ask the right question, you're not going to learn anything. You're not going to discover anything. And I think this is true. I tried to find a younger picture of Deming, because usually you see pictures of him, he's quite old. This one, he's at least relatively young. So I like to imagine wonderful, and I want to think about how am I going to get from where we're at to wonderful. And so I'm going to just supply a few questions that I would ask. I'm not going to give you answers to most of it, but I'll give you an example answer at the end. Why do we want control and certainty about time, cost, and schedule? That's really important. People want that. Can we improve our chance to get to wonderful if we give up our desire to have control and certainty? This is the questions I would be asking myself. This is the kind of questioning of the status quo I want to do. Can something that seems so right be so wrong? Everybody says estimates are good. We need to do the estimates. Actually, I don't know that everybody says that, but a lot of managers say that. A lot of people buying the work from us say that. I like this picture, by the way, because of the smoke coming out of the chimney. Can you make it out on the big screen? I like that picture. How much work do we have to do before we have enough information, enough understanding to do a reasonable estimate? Are we ever paying attention to that amount of time? How do we know we made a good decision? Now, I've got a decision-making tool here with me. I can sell it to you for 200, it says 200 forints. I could sell this to you, I wouldn't make a profit, but I could sell you this for 200 forints, and I can make a decision. This is easy. Heads or tails, well, I don't know if they have heads and tails on these coins, but I could look at it and make a decision. That's going to help me make a decision, right? We don't need help making decisions. What do we need help with? Making good decisions. So if estimates are helping us make decisions, we better make sure they're helping us make really good decisions. How do we know? Particularly if we chose to do Project A over Project B because of the estimates, and we get halfway into Project A, pretend that was the one I started with in my first story, and we're 6 months into it and things aren't getting better, and we're a year into it and things aren't getting better, we've already doubled the time. Did we make a good decision? And what do we do about it now? So are the things we think we want a trap? Is this trapping us into thinking that we can't change later? That's sort of what I'm worried about. Do we become less flexible? Does this harden us to seeing the bad decision we made? This is the kind of questioning that I want to do. And is getting better at estimates the only way? When I'm out on a trip like this, I really have to watch my weight because I gain weight really easily. When I'm near a candy bowl or some sweets, I'll eat them. Is there a better way for me to eat the sweets so I don't gain weight? Because with me, it's garbage in, garbage stays. If I eat the sweet, I'm going to gain weight. What can I do? Chew it more slowly? Chew it quicker? Swallow it whole? Dissolve it in a cup of water? How can I eat the sweet without gaining weight? Maybe the alternative is to not eat the sweet. Okay, so if the types of decisions we're making require that we do estimates, then maybe are there some other types of decisions we can make that don't require estimates? So I'm going to give you one example of a question that I would often ask. Is on time and on budget a good measure of the results of our decision? And I would hope that somebody here would say, not really. And there's lots of reasons it's not. But here's something that I noticed, is what I would call creative accounting. The first thing that I'd like to point out is feature cuts. I've seen people do feature cuts specifically so they could deliver on time. Did they really meet their deadline? Did they meet their budget? I'm not really sure if they delivered what they were supposed to deliver. Another thing is working late or extra hours near the end of the project. And sometimes that means over and over again as each deadline slips. Another one that I think is bordering on really bad is not recording all those hours that we worked. Not being allowed to record them against the job that we're using them on. This is going to skew our future numbers. So later on, we really don't know what it took us to do that project. We'll feel better about it because it looked like it took less time. So Bjarti Bugsnes has this saying that I really like, fear of losing control is a big barrier for change. But the control is merely or usually an illusion of control. And the fear is real. So we keep doing that thing because we're afraid of losing control that we don't have. What are we going to do about that? I really can't tell you. I'll in a bit tell you what I do. But I think I've got enough time to do a quick break and look at a few words from industry-recognized people. I have about 20 of these. I make them look like they agree with me. I don't know that they necessarily do. But these are real words from these actual people. Mary Poppendick, who's probably spoken at this conference at some point. Estimates are for cost centers, not for products. We're mostly working on products. Software development is not a cost center. Kent Beck, hopefully you all at least own one of his books. Alternative to estimates, do the most important thing until it either ships or it's no longer the most important thing. And I would modify that slightly for myself to be just do something that seems important, and I'll explain a little bit more of that later. I can't know up front what's the most important thing. We can think about what seems most important right now, and we'll probably find out real soon it wasn't anyways. So just, I am focused on working on something that seems important. Martin Fowler, you all know of him. I like this quote from him, and I'm not sure he agrees with me at all. As teams progress, they first struggle with estimation. And then they can get quite good at it, and eventually they discover that maybe they don't need it, or at least often don't need it. And I would put in, let's just jump to the third one there. Why are we bothering to go through those other two? I don't think we really need them. We'll talk about that more. I'm just sharing some ideas, though. You may need them where you work. Oh, a word of warning, don't go back to work on Monday and say, hey, I heard this guy talk, and he seemed reasonable, and we should question why we're doing estimates. That may not be a good thing to do at your place of work. So I've known several people who got fired for doing that. I don't know if they can do that here or wherever it is you work. Just a word of caution. Michelle McCarthy, I love this saying from her. One of the problems with the schedule is that it gives us the idea that we can take that long. So it's kind of setting us up to take longer than we maybe should. And last, I'll give one from Ron Jeffries. Estimating when we'll be done is wrong. That really seems clear. Forcing the answer is worse. Wow. I kind of like that. So I don't know if Ron completely still agrees with that. You'd have to ask him. But he usually, once he gets something that bold, he sticks with it for a while. One more, because I like this really short one. Dhaval Panchal, he says, estimates presuppose a solution. Hopefully you can see what that means is we can't estimate how long it will take to figure out a solution, but if we have a solution, maybe we can estimate how long it will take to implement that solution. Do we know the solution to our problems before we dig in them? I'm not sure that we can. I'll get this one from Russell Akoff and one that I've got modified from it. Managers who don't know how to measure what they want settle for wanting what they can measure. And I think in a lot of cases, we can't know. We can't measure these things. So this is the way I would say it. Most of the things that really matter cannot be measured. So instead, we allow the things that can be measured to become what we want. And I'm not sure that that's, or what matters to us. I'm not sure that's worthwhile. Matter of fact, I really am doubtful that the measurement is the answer. I'm reading as much about that as I can right now. Well, we only have 75 parts left or so. No, I guess 89 parts left. warning, I'm going to give you a little bit of a practical bit here, and then I have to start with that same warning I started with. I'm going to tell you what I've done for a number of years, how I've worked with this, but it's what's worked for me. It may not work for you. So first of all, this is a work of art, and I like to use this as an example of how people think about their requirements that they bring to us. They think everything's the way it belongs, everything's been ordered and figured out, and they can hand it to us and we understand it, and we can take it and work with it. I don't know if this pointer will work. Oh, it will. You see those things there? Those things there are fitting into the same size of tube, so they've been organized together. That really is telling to me. I hope that has meaning to you. We organize things by perhaps the wrong things. Those don't look like they're related to each other. They might be, but they certainly fit in the same size tubes. I hope that's a point that I made clear enough. I'm getting a picture from the side here. They're trying to catch the sweat dripping off my forehead. So to me, this is more what our projects are like. Now I can say this is what our project really is, but I'll take it a step further. It's really, really like this. So the edges are fuzzy. The inside is fuzzy. Now there's some patterns we can see in there, but they don't yet make sense. And are those things that look like they are similar? Do they really belong together? For example, are the yellow bits meaning to be brought together? Are the orange bits related to each other? Are the white things separations, or are they, what is it? I like this. This is where we begin. If we can start here and reasonably work with it, we can come up with a good result. So, it's in the doing of the work that we discover the work we must do. Hopefully I said that earlier. And this is something I really believe in. If we had a way to start in on this, we could start unraveling that thing. I usually do this as an exercise. We wouldn't have time in this session here today, but here's what I am looking for. I'm not looking for size. I don't care about smallness. What I do care about is this thing I'm going to work on right now potentially valuable? We don't know value until we actually make the thing and deliver it. Is it understandable? And what I mean, do we understand enough of it to feel like we can start working on it? We can't understand the whole thing. Is it distinct? Is it clearly separate from other things? Is it a clear chunk? And is it cohesive? And all that means to me, does this seem like it belongs together? If it doesn't, then we can separate it and make two distinct things. That's all I'm after. Alan Kelly did a great talk just a few minutes ago, very much related to the same ideas. I want this small chunk of stuff. Okay, so this requires no estimates. I don't need to make an estimate. Those are the things we'd look at if we were trying to make an estimate, but the end result of that exercise doesn't have to be an estimate. When I find these things, when they're present, then I think I've got something I can start working on. But that doesn't mean I'm going to be able to work on it from beginning to end. It just means I have a place to start, because it's going to be in the doing of the work that I'll discover what I don't yet know. So we can decouple it, work on it, and it'll provide feedback. So let's see what we can do with that. We found that chunk, we go and do it, we learn the lesson, and we loop back. How long should this cycle be? My hope would be it's going to be 2 or 3 hours or less. Not 2 or 3 days, certainly not 2 or 3 weeks. But if it has to be it whatever it has to be. But hopefully as we discover, and I'll kind of go through that now on this little example. I call this the 12 calculations, and I have 5 or 6 projects like this. This one was in 2000, well, I don't remember the exact year. Let's just say 2003. I'd gone in to look at a project that was a written document that was about this many pages. Let's say this has 80 or 90 pages. Each page defined some kind of a feature or capability. And I looked at it, they'd hired me, they brought me in to look at this project because they were stalled on it and they weren't getting anywhere. And I looked at it and I said, well, I can't read all this and tell you anything in a few days. It might take me months to get the understanding I need to talk to you about this. They were in the middle of this project and wanted to know what to do. And this is exactly what I said. That looks like something you could explain to me relatively straightforward. And then I asked them the first question, would that bring you value if you got that and not everything else first? And their answer was yes. So let's bring it out of the document. And now I no longer have that whole document to understand. I have this much of a document to understand. And now I can start taking it apart. Is this part cohesive with the rest? It's not. Can this be decoupled? Yes. And pretty soon I'm going to take a bit out of the middle to make this really a great example. take that part out there so I don't just have the edges. And I say, okay, I kind of understand this, I'm going to start working on it. Then we start working on it, and we ended up with saying, okay, that part's not needed, and that part's not needed, but oh, this other thing that we thought we didn't need, we do need it, and we got that done in a day or two. And then I asked them, what more of these parts that we ripped off do you want? They said, well, actually, this is probably enough. And they started exercising it for a couple days, and they came back to me, and they said, we don't want any more of that one yet, but there's this other one that's a big problem. If I was, I don't know, can I walk in front of that? Will that ruin the whole filming of this thing? They told me that was a good one to start with, but now we realize there's an earlier one. So let's say we started on, I think the one maybe was the green one with the dots because it looked big. And now they said, you know, there's this one way over here, because these are calculations. And these calculations feed into each other. The ones at the far end using data that came from the earlier ones, and they are all getting data from all over the company. This was about planning. This was about planning the workload of a manufacturing floor of a factory. They said, you know, one of these early ones, if we fail with that, all the work that comes after that is no good. We have to start over again. Now, every Monday, they needed to spend time doing this. By the end of the day, they had the week organized. So they picked out one of those early ones, and we started working on it. We did exactly the same thing. We decided this part was cohesive, that it was decouplable from the rest of it, and we can work on it. So far, I've got a bit that we've already done. Oh, it's the one with the hole in it. And now we're going to add this new little part to it. It doesn't have to be decoupled from this. It just has to be decoupled from the rest of it. We brought that together. In doing it, we discovered some things we didn't need, and we discovered some things we didn't realize before, and we brought that in. Look at how much we've done, very little. At the end of that one, same thing happened again. What more of that do you want? And actually, I'm going to do this in front of you just so you can see how easy it is. We took the page out, we looked at it, we divided it up into some smaller pieces. I'll take 2 pieces like that, and we started working on it. We discovered the things we didn't need, discovered something else we should have thought about, and now we had it. This is exactly what happened. We've now done this much work. Now I forgot it. Was it this piece of paper or that piece of paper? We've done this much work out of this much work, and an interesting thing happened. What do you think happened? The rest of this seemed less interesting to them. We've solved their biggest problems. It only took us a few weeks, maybe 3 or 4 actual work days of work to do. So I call this the 80-20, 80-20. If an application can be created with only 20% of the functionality that serves most of what they wanted, if we use the Pareto principle, maybe that's true or close, then let's just do the 20%, but we have to discover what it is, so this is never perfect. So what I want to do, instead of just working on that 20%, let's pick some little bit of it out and work on 20% of that little bit. I hope that makes sense. That's what I call the 80-20, 80-20. So what we're going to do is end up with how much percent if we could do that in a pure form. 4%, somebody said. Good mathematicians here. But how much percent was this of this? It was even less than 4%. And this really opened up my idea about what this is, and I call it deliver features until bored. Because exactly what happened on this one, they said, that's actually made our day so much easier. We have this other problem we want to solve. That's what I'm after. I hope that makes sense to you. So what I want to do is crank up our ability to deliver these many small, potentially valuable bits and discover the real value. And if we can deliver just the real value, then we're going to get some sort of a benefit. This is all I'm asking. Let's try that. We know how this cycle works. We have an idea, we turn it into a story, we can code it, we can deploy it to real use, we get some feedback, and we can evaluate it. Where in this cycle does learning happen? Somebody shouted out, everywhere. We don't need to wait till we're at the end where we're delivering something. We're going to learn things along the way. And of course, to me, this is what Agile does for me. This is why I'm so enamored with Agile. It's because we get to do this over and over again. Notice how clever this animation is. Really quite beautiful, isn't it? All righty. So I've worked this way now for over 9 years without doing any estimate at all, doing many, many projects. plus going back as far as 1999, 98 in software development and in some other things before that. So I told you there are 83 parts. I'm going to give you the sixth one. That's as far as we can get. This to me is about turning up the good. And this is something that's starting to come to me. My friend Kevin Meadows, who I've written, he helped me co-write the mob programming book that we have on Lean Pub. He mentioned this to me the other day. He said, you know, turning up the good is maybe a good way to judge things. If we see something we're doing and we can turn up the good on it, then we can try to turn it up again and turn it up again. So how do we turn up the good on these things? And so we can use this as a way to judge, are estimates working well for us? So how do we turn up the good on estimates? Let's do more of them. Let's do them more frequently. Let's take longer to do them. What would we do to turn up the good on estimates? So which would you rather have? Let's figure out how to turn up the good on estimates, or let's turn up the good on our ability to rapidly deliver potentially useful software. Which would pay off better? I'm not telling you what would. I'm saying these are the things I like to consider. These are the kinds of questions. Turn up the good on our ability to discover and deliver. Oh, misspelling. I was working on these slides today. There's several people here who will mention that. I will try to fix that before I publish it. So back to the bigger idea, and kind of the end of the talk. The object isn't to create art or to make art. It's to be in that wonderful state which makes art inevitable. Good things will happen if we put an environment together where good things are allowed to happen. What is it going to take to do that in our industry? So lastly but not leastly, what should we be certain about? So I would say let's be certain we have this environment where discovery and innovation happens so we can get these great solutions just happening for us. And what should we control? I would say this. Let's control the urge to control things. If we can do that, I think we'll come out ahead. Let's quit worrying about whether we'll get done in 3 months from now. And let's just get good at being done every day. Something like that. So thank you very much. I don't know if we have time for questions, but I've already given you plenty of questions. Thank you very much.
We have time for a couple questions.
We have time for a few questions?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. And I also have some papers here if anybody wants them when we're done.
All right. Well, the first question, they'll show up on the
They'll show up
screen as
here.
well.
The illustrations by Andrea Zuill are beautiful. Who is Andrea Zuill? It's just a coincidence. I don't know who she is. I found her artwork on the internet. No, she's my wife. And she doesn't do these pictures for me. She does them for her portfolio, for her clients. She's a children's book author and illustrator. And so when I see her do a picture that I think fits in with my talk, I ask for permission to use it, and she often can let me do that. And so that's where they came from. Thank you so much for noting that. And it's now on film. It'll be all over the world. And I have to say, every time I tell her I think her artwork's great, it's kind of meaningless. But when somebody else does say that, I think it has more meaning for her. So I appreciate it. So thank you, Andrea. So the next one, if you don't have estimates, how can other teams that are dependent on your work plan their work? You collaborate with them instead. I don't have a good answer for that. Why do we do work that way? Why aren't we more decoupled? Let's figure that one out. We'll do the next one. Estimations for business, usually it's about strategy or politics. In a no estimates world, what could replace it? Well, no strategy and no politics. If it's a no world, there is nothing that, this is the whole point of my whole talk. We are using something because we want the value that we wish it would give us, but it doesn't. And yet we keep wishing and keep using that thing. So yeah, I have no easy answer for that. So those of you who are, let's say, half my age here right now, in 20, 30 years, you'll be running these companies. Remember these things then. Make the change that we can't make at this moment, except for in isolated ways. So we need to have estimates for answering public tenders. I had no answer for you. We need to know how much it costs beforehand. What else to do but try our best? Pad it and get good lawyers. Have a contract that says any changes are going to cost you dearly. And they have to sign off on it over and over again. Is that not the way the business is done? This is the problem I'm seeing. That's why I'm questioning this. Why do we allow a business like this to happen? I can't solve that for you. What do you say? Let's see. What do you say to managers who want estimates to decide whether or not to do certain work? I think we're asking the same question over and over again. What you say to them is, I would like to give these to you. I'll give a quick story. Do we have enough time for a very quick story? I was working at a place. I was a developer. And the manager came to me and the other lead developers and said, we need your estimates for this project. This next 3 months iteration. It was a different project. And so I said, you know, I can make some guesses for you, and he said, look, Anders, he gets his estimates in on time. Kurti, she gets her estimates in on time. Greg, he gets his estimates in on time. Why can't you get your estimates in on time? So I thought, okay, well, let me go see what I could do. So what did I do? I went and talked to Anders and Kurti and Greg. I won't say who said what, because these are real people, but one said, oh, I just make up I look at the list and just write some numbers down. He doesn't even read the documents. That told you too much already. Another one, the person said, I just make up some low numbers because the manager seems to like low numbers. And the other one said, I pad all my estimates by 3 or 4 times because I never have enough time to do the work. So I just say, if I think it'll take 2 hours, I put down 8 hours or even 2 days. So I went back to my desk with that knowledge. I looked at the paper and I wrote down a bunch of high numbers. I didn't read the documents. I took them into the manager and I told him exactly that. I didn't tell him who told me what, but I said to the manager, I just made up some numbers and I made them high so I would have some time to fudge in the middle of this thing. And he said, thank you. So what are you going to do? All righty. How should price calculations for fixed price proposals? We're asking the same question over and over again.
Yeah, I think we're also...
How to motivate senior managers? Or we ran out of time?
I think, yes.
So we're out of time. Thank you so much.
Look at this audience, look at this. Thank you so much, guys. See you in 10 minutes. We have a 10 minutes break.